And welcome back to the Power Accountability League. I'm your pal, Dan L. This is my channel. I might be related to Cal L. And today's video is entitled, There Are None So Blind as Those Who Will Not See. And we're going to be talking about the lawsuits that have arisen because of out of the November 3rd, 2020 election, due to, about, regarding the November 3rd, 2020 election for President of the United States. And obviously, there are many other offices being voted on that day, as you would expect. Anyway, the media, and I mean the left-leaning media, the right-leaning media, the centrist media, they've all reported the same thing, that Donald Trump has filed 40, 50, 60 lawsuits and lost every one of them. I don't know if that's entirely true. In fact, I don't think that is. I think other entities in support of Trump's case have filed lawsuits. So they're lumping Trump's legal actions in favor of overturning a corrupt election, or at least having a corrupt election set aside so we can have an uncorrupted election. But anyway, not just him. There are governmental bodies, there are private sector entities which are filing lawsuits basically that are mimicking Trump's or in support of Trump's. But anyway, I'm just going to take the media at face value and say, yes, Trump has lost 40, 45, let's say 55 lawsuits in a row. Hasn't won anything, lost everything, even though I don't even think that's true. I think there are some examples where judges have actually ruled in favor of Trump's motions, and then a higher court dismisses them or whatever. By the way, speaking of that, in the 2000 election with Bush and Gore, Bush v. Gore, no, Gore v. Bush. Anyway, in that election, Al Gore filed a bunch of lawsuits. He won. He won all his lawsuits. Al Gore, because the left controls our judiciary top to bottom. Anyway, so he filed, except we're going to contradict that with this story. Again, it's a true story. Gore won all of his lawsuits, and then it ended up in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, after noticing that Gore won all of his lawsuits, they said no. You don't get to basically corrupt the election of 2000, the year 2000. Okay, and I'm sorry. I apologize if I earlier said 2020 about Bush and Gore. That's wrong. Bush and Gore is the 2000 November 2000 election. 2020 is the Trump versus Biden election. Anyway, to get back to the story, Al Gore won all his lawsuits and then lost at the Supreme Court, and I'm glad because Al Gore had. Hey, he was on the wrong side of history. He wouldn't accept the fact that he lost, and he wanted the courts to install him as president. That didn't happen. So in this case, though, you're probably thinking, well, Trump, same thing. Trump lost, and he wants the courts to install him. No, what Trump and the people supporting Trump want is for actual fair elections, actual non uncorrupted elections, and we didn't have that in November 2020. But anyway, like I said, the media, I'm going to give them, just going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say he has lost every single um, lawsuit that he's filed. And you might be thinking, well, there we go. That ends the story. That ends the debate. If he loses, but something you may not know is in most, I think in the majority of these, the judges have said, I'm not going to rule on the merits of the case. Now, what does that mean? When a judge says, I'm dismissing the case, I'm not going to rule on the merits of the case. And I said most, I don't know how many judges, but I'll say I'm guessing a lot of them. I do know of a few specifically who said, I'm dismissing your case, but I'm not ruling on the merits of the case. What does that mean? It means they do not want to look at the evidence. Someone goes into a courtroom, says, I'm filing a lawsuit, I want to overturn a certain action, or I want to get something adjudicated in a way that we have to recompose the events that happened. Anyway, the point is this. The judges, if a judge says, I'm not ruling on the merits, it means I'm not looking at the evidence. I don't want to see the evidence. Do not show me the evidence. I do not want to have to comment on the evidence. Now, why? Why would a judge dismiss something without even, and by the way, I'll tell you one time, I sued someone in small claims court. Not anyway, and a judge, and this was in California, and the judge said, he said, if you want it, he said, I worked for the insurance industry, and so if you don't want me in this case, you can cancel this case. I'm sorry, you can take this case to a different judge. And but I think I'm going to rule fairly. So being the stupid person I was, and sometimes can be to this day, I said no. I said you said you'll be fair. So then I presented my argument against a company I was suing, and And the judge said, I'm dismissing it. I'm like, well, you haven't heard anything. He said, yeah, I don't have to hear anything. I don't want to hear anything. So this judge told me he actually told me, I'm going to look at the evidence and I think I can rule fairly on this case, but you don't have to keep me as your judge. You can, since I've worked in the particular industry that you're suing, a company that's in that industry. I wasn't suing an industry, I was suing an individual company. But since I've worked in that industry, if you want to get a different, anyway, the point is the judge lied to me because he wasn't going to be fair. Well, anyway, so that my story is stupid. I'm sorry. I'm ashamed I put that in this video. What's important is that Trump is getting the same treatment from judges. They're like, I don't even, now why would they not want to look at the evidence? Because they don't want to have to comment it on their ruling. Why would a judge not want to have to comment on evidence in his ruling? Because if the evidence is overwhelming that the things that Trump is alleging, or not Trump, Trump and his team and the people who are supporting Trump, if what they're alleging can be proven with the evidence they're giving to the court, well, and a judge just disagrees, just doesn't like Trump, disagrees with their agenda, doesn't like their politics, doesn't agree with the Republican Party, whatever the judge's personal predilections are, whatever the judge's personal biases, whatever the judge's personal agenda is, he doesn't want to have to defend his ruling or her ruling. And so what happens is they say, no, I'm not even going to look at this stuff. You're just get out of my court. And you might be thinking, that sounds like a corrupted system. Well, you've heard me talk about FISA in the past. FISA isn't constitutional. So, yeah, so I've said many, many times that the number one problem we have is we don't have a rule of law society. And there's many ways to tell that we don't. One way is when a judge says, I don't want to look at the evidence. Why would any judge ever say, don't show me the evidence? And like I said, in this case, because when they rule, if they can't refute the evidence, which I think a lot of these judges knows they can't. A lot of these judges in these lawsuits, they know they can't refute the evidence. They'd have to say something stupid like, "Well, yes, there's lots of evidence in support of the plaintiff's motion, but you know what? I really don't like the plaintiff. So because I don't like him, that means I don't accept his evidence. That's basically I don't accept objective reality." And I've talked about that in many, many videos. So that's what's going on right now. When people say, "Well, look at Trump. He's so stupid. Nobody agrees. Everyone hates him. Although the judiciary," and I agree, probably the judiciary hates him because they're lawyers. American Bar Association is a far left extremist group, as far as I'm concerned, and lawyers in general are pretty crappy at their jobs. Yeah, they call themselves officers of the court, which implies they care about the rule of law, the Constitution. They don't. So not all of them, just most of them, the majority of them. But anyway, to finish this video off, so when you hear people say to you, well, he keeps losing all these lawsuits, and again, that's not even accurate because it's not just him. There's a whole aggregate of people and organizations supporting Trump, and they are losing. And I do accept and agree with the fact that they're losing over and over and over in our court system. And like I said, you can tell what's going on whenever a judge says, I'm not ruling on the merits of the case. That's almost an admission saying, you know what? The merits may argue that Trump should be given relief in the court system. But I happen to not like him. I happen to not like his party. There are certain people I don't want to upset. Certain people I'm afraid of, certain organizations I'm afraid of. I don't want people picketing my house. I don't want people marching outside. I don't want my life threatened. I don't want my wife threatened. I don't want my children threatened. So I'm gonna help create an injustice system. I'm gonna be an unjust judge. I'm going to sacrifice my personal integrity. I'm going to sacrifice my professional integrity. I'm going to sacrifice the integrity of the judiciary, and I'm going to sacrifice the integrity of government in general. And now they may not cognitively say all the things that I just said. They certainly aren't going to say them out loud, and their internal monologue may not have them say these things. But I mean, they may. But the bottom line is this: when anytime a judge says, "I'm not going to rule on the merits of the case. I'm just going to make the case go away," that's called corruption. That's called a banana republic. That's called an unconstitutional society. So yeah, we're through the looking glass. I already have a video on that subject. We are in a backwards universe, an upside down, backwards, inside out universe. Everything has been everything that should be normal has been turned into abnormal, and everything that's abnormal and unhealthy has been declared normal and healthy. Anyway, so just a little food for thought about all these legal. By the way, the Supreme Court still hasn't weighed in, and they may not. They're not. No one can force the Supreme Court to. If the Supreme Court witnesses nothing but corruption in the lower courts, the lower appellate courts. Anyway, I'm not an expert. I'm not a constitutional scholar. Kind of like Obama. Neither one of us are constitutional scholars. But the point is, the Supreme Court. I do know this much: they don't have to take any case. And even if the Supreme Court, even if the majority of the Supreme Court said to themselves, not openly to the public, if they said, oh, yeah, there's a lot of corruption going down here in the lower courts, they still don't have to take it. But so we'll see what happens. But I can tell you right now, um, we have a we have a completely broken system in the United States of America. The judicial system's completely broken. Maybe it's been that way, forever. I mean, since the founding. But we definitely have a completely broken system. Our legislature, our legislative part of our government's broken. The judicial part of our government is broken, and the executive branch is broken because you see all these governors and mayors, and we've seen presidents now for about 200 years issue all these executive orders. Most of them, in my opinion, probably are not constitutional because the executive branch cannot legislate. They're not an executive, president, governor, mayor, any executive in the government cannot issue a new law, create a new law out of thin air. They can't. They're not supposed to. The Constitution says laws originate with the legislature, and then the executive branch can sign them into effect. Anyway, and unfortunately, our government doesn't work that way anymore. The executive branch creates laws all the times. The legislature has given away pretty much all their power and authority to both the executive and the judicial branch. And the judicial branch has intentionally usurped pretty much most of the power from the legislature, which they wanted to give it away, and also the executive. The executive branch doesn't want to give away their power, but the judicial branch has basically usurped almost all the power from the executive branch against their will, and almost all the power from the legislative branch with their blessing. The legislative branch doesn't want any power. The executive branch does, but they've had it stripped from them because the judicial branch. So now in the United States of America, instead of having a trilateral government, we just have one part of our government which matters, and that's the judiciary, and they are notoriously horrible at their job. So take care. Happy holidays. Take care. Bye bye.